The air shifts when a trap is set. You can feel it before you see it. A silence that isn't natural, a tension that crawls across your skin like electricity. People pretend they don't notice, they laugh, they carry on. But deep down, they sense it too, that something has already been arranged against them. And then comes the update. The so-called emergency, not to warn you, but to remind you that you were already walking into it blind. The net is tight. The pieces are moving. And the only question left is whether you keep pretending nothing's wrong, or whether you start paying attention before the floor vanishes beneath your feet. The silence before the strike is never innocent. People walk through it like it's nothing, humming, smiling, pretending it's just another ordinary moment, but deep inside, there's always that tiny itch they can't explain. The air feels different, the light bends in strange ways, and the rhythm of things isn't quite right. That silence is heavy, too heavy, but most ignore it. Because to admit it means to face the fact that something is about to happen. They tell themselves it's just nerves, imagination, a passing thought, and so they relax right into the jaws of the very thing waiting for them. Every trap ever laid starts with silence. Not noise. Not chaos, silence. Because silence lulls the mind, it rocks you into a false sense of safety. It's the predator's greatest ally. The space between footsteps, the pause between words, the calm before the thunder. And it fools people every time. They mistake quiet for peace when in reality, quiet is the signal that something has stopped moving, that something is hiding, that something is waiting. The absence of sound isn't emptiness, it's the sound of control. Someone somewhere is holding their breath, waiting for you to take just one more step. The silence before the strike tells you more than words ever could. It's not the obvious warning. It's the unspoken one, the kind your bones feel before your brain does. That faint prickle in the back of your neck, that sudden hesitation in your chest, that's not paranoia, it's instinct. But instinct is something people drown under distractions. They turn up their music, scroll their screens, talk over their fear, just so they don't have to face what the silence is screaming at them. And in doing so, they walk willingly into the teeth of the trap. There's a reason the silence feels unnatural. Because it is. Life is never still. There are always sounds, movements, interruptions. When it suddenly stops, it's because something is being hidden. Think about it, the forest goes quiet right before the predator strikes. The crowd holds its breath right before something snaps. The world knows how to pause when danger is close. But people don't listen. They treat the pause like a break, when really it's the countdown. The ones who survive are the ones who pay attention to the silence. They're the ones who don't dismiss the feeling, who don't cover it up, who don't laugh it off. They notice the absence. They feel the shift, and they act before the strike lands. Because silence isn't innocent. It's information. It's the warning that someone else has already made their move, and now they're just waiting for you to make yours. Most never figure that out until it's too late, until the silence explodes into chaos. And by then, the trap has already closed around them. So the silence before the strike. It's the cruelest sound in the world, because it's not really silence at all. It's a message, a countdown, a truth too many ignore. It's never innocent. And the moment you believe it is, you've already stepped into the center of the trap. Traps are built on your distractions, not on your weakness, not on your strength, but on the moments when your mind wanders, when your attention slips, just enough for someone else to tighten the ropes around you. That's the beauty of it. Nobody needs to chain you down if they can simply keep you looking the other way. Distraction is the easiest bait because it doesn't feel like a trap at all. It feels like entertainment, like comfort, like escape. You think you're in control, but really, every second you waste is another piece of the cage being assembled around you. Distraction doesn't shout, it whispers. It pulls you toward the flashing light, the cheap thrill, the endless noise that keeps you from noticing the hands setting the snare. You think you're chasing pleasure, but you're being led by the nose into confinement. Every scroll, every laugh at nonsense, every delay in action isn't harmless. It's permission for the trap to grow stronger. Because no one builds a cage in front of your eyes. They build it while you're busy staring at something else. And that's why traps work. People never fall because they're too weak. They fall because they weren't paying attention. A hunter doesn't need to fight you if you're already chasing the bait. He doesn't need to push you if you're already walking yourself into the net. He only needs to make sure you don't notice what's really happening. And people are so desperate to escape their own thoughts that they'll do the work for him. They'll look away, they'll laugh, they'll shrug, while the ropes tighten just a little more with every distraction. Think about how easy it is to lead people astray. A simple story, a shiny promise, a false sense of security. People fall in love with the bait. They stare at it, argue about it, obsess over it, never realizing the bait was never the point. The bait exists to keep your eyes fixed away from the ground beneath you, away from the wires hidden in the dirt. You focus on the candy while the jaws of the trap are being armed right under your feet. That's the design. That's the art. The cruelest part. Distractions feel harmless. They feel small. One wasted moment here. One indulgence there. It doesn't seem like it matters. Until you realize the trap was never built in one strike. It's built brick by brick, second by second. Each distraction becoming a piece of the prison you'll eventually find yourself in. By the time you notice, the walls are already too high, the door already locked. And then you wonder how it happened, how you got here. When the truth is simple, you handed away your focus, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to protect you. The trap doesn't need force when it has your attention. That's why the smartest hunters don't chase their prey. They distract them. They let the prey wander, chasing shadows, until the path they thought was theirs is suddenly gone. People don't realize the price of distraction until it's already claimed everything. By then, they're trapped not because they were caught off guard, but because they were too busy staring at the wrong thing. The rope tightens, the net drops, and all they can think about is how they didn't see it coming. But the truth is, they weren't even looking. Pressure reveals who you really are. Not the smile you put on when life is easy, not the calm tone you use when everything goes according to plan. No, pressure strips all that away and shows the raw, unfiltered version of you that you try so hard to hide. People love to pretend they're strong, composed, in control. But when the walls start closing in, when the air gets thinner, when the weight presses harder on their chest, that's when the mask begins to crack. And that's when the truth comes out. Most people don't even know themselves until they're cornered. They walk through life rehearsing roles, wearing masks, imitating strength they don't truly own. But pressure doesn't care about the script. It rips it from your hands and forces you to improvise. Suddenly, you see what you're really made of. The excuses disappear, the pretenses vanish, and what's left is the core of you. Raw, trembling, desperate, or maybe stronger than you ever thought possible. You see, the world doesn't test you with comfort. It tests you with weight, with fire, with storms. Diamonds are made under pressure, but so is dust. And you don't get to decide which one you'll be in the moment. It's decided by everything you've built inside, long before the pressure arrives. The ones who crumble, they weren't destroyed by the weight. They were already fragile. The ones who rise, they weren't given special power in the moment. They had it hidden, waiting to be awakened when the squeeze came. That's why pressure is feared. It exposes frauds. It unmasks pretenders. People hate being under pressure not because it's painful, but because it's revealing. It doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter. It doesn't bend to your image of yourself. It shows you exactly what you are in the coldest, clearest mirror possible. And if you don't like what you see, that's not the pressure's fault. That's yours. Notice how people panic under pressure. They make decisions they swore they'd never make. They break promises they thought were unbreakable. They reveal fears they denied ever having. Pressure is the sculptor, and their actions are the cracks forming in the stone. It's not about what they say they are. It's about what they do when the weight becomes unbearable. That's the truth they can't escape. But pressure isn't always destruction. Sometimes it's transformation. Sometimes it forges you into something sharper, stronger, unshakable. The pain of it, the suffocation of it, it reshapes you if you endure it. Think of every blade. It was once rough metal until fire and pressure made it deadly. Think of every great leader. They were once ordinary until the storms tested them and revealed their steel. Without pressure, there is no growth. Without struggle, there is no becoming. Still, most people run from it. They'd rather live soft, untouched lives, pretending comfort equals strength. They avoid the squeeze, the heat, the fight. But that choice doesn't save them. It weakens them. Because the moment life inevitably applies its pressure, they collapse with no foundation to stand on. They've trained themselves for comfort, not for resilience. And so they shatter the first time the weight is real. The irony is, pressure doesn't create weakness. It only exposes it. If you're hollow inside, the weight will crush you. If you've built substance, it will refine you. That's why the same storm that destroys one man builds another. The same fire that burns one into ashes transforms another into something unbreakable. Pressure doesn't discriminate. It simply tells the truth. When the squeeze comes, when the weight presses down, when the storm closes in, you won't have time to fake strength. You'll act, and your actions will show exactly who you are. That's the secret people can't accept under pressure. You can't pretend. You can only reveal. Every move you ignore tightens the net, but you tell yourself it's nothing, just noise in the background. A coincidence, a detail too small to matter. That's the first mistake. Nets aren't thrown all at once. They're woven thread by thread, strand by strand, each one so thin it feels harmless. A missed call here. A strange look there. A word that seemed off but you brushed aside. And yet each piece is part of something larger. Something that only becomes obvious when it's too late and the threads are already wrapped around your throat. People love to believe they can outsmart the trap once they finally notice it. But what they don't understand is that by the time it looks like a trap, it's already finished. That's the genius of it. You never see the danger when it's quiet, when it's subtle, when it's boring. You ignore the little moves, the small changes, because you're too distracted, too comfortable, too sure of yourself. And that's exactly when the net gets tighter. It's never the big moves that destroy you. It's the ones you didn't bother to notice. A whisper instead of a shout. A shadow instead of a storm. The moves that seem insignificant, they are the deadliest. Because they slip past your defenses without you even realizing you've lowered them. You laugh them off, you dismiss them, and then suddenly you're tangled in something you can't escape. That's when panic sets in, when your breath shortens, when your mind starts replaying every ignored moment, wishing you'd paid attention. Do you know why the ignored moves hurt the most? Because deep down, you did notice them. You felt that flicker of discomfort, that spark of doubt, but you silenced it. You convinced yourself it wasn't real, it wasn't important, it wasn't worth your time. That's the cruel part. The trap doesn't just capture you. It forces you to realize you helped build it by ignoring the signs. You tighten the net around yourself every time you chose to look away. People think danger always comes with flashing lights, alarms blaring, chaos roaring. But real danger, it comes quiet, almost polite. It doesn't need to rush. It just waits for you to underestimate it. That's the way the world works. The knife you see coming is rarely the one that cuts you. It's the one hidden in plain sight, the one you dismissed, the one you thought was too small to matter. Every ignored move adds weight. Every overlooked thread pulls tighter. And once the net begins to close, there's no bargaining with it, no undoing the strands. That's when you understand the trap wasn't built overnight. It was built in every second. You weren't paying attention. That realization is the sharpest blade of all. Think about it. How many times have you brushed off the little things, convinced they couldn't possibly lead to anything bigger? And yet, here you are, suffocating in a web of your own negligence. The trap is never one grand moment. It's 1,000 tiny details, each one ignored until the pattern was complete. By the time you see it, the game is already over. That's why the net tightens with silence, not noise. It doesn't need to rush. It doesn't need to scare you into action. It just needs you to keep looking the other way, to keep pretending you're safe, to keep ignoring the whispers that would have saved you. And you will. Because comfort is always more appealing than awareness, and ignorance always feels lighter than vigilance. Until it doesn't. Until the threads you ignored become chains, and the moves you laughed at become the prison you can't escape. Danger is loud to those who are listening. But most people walk through life deaf by choice. They hear what they want to hear, see what they want to see. And anything that doesn't fit their picture gets tossed aside like background noise. The footsteps behind them, just coincidence. The sudden silence in the room, nothing to worry about. The warning in someone's eyes must be their imagination. They laugh it off, they shrug it away, and they keep moving forward as if the world doesn't whisper before it screams. But the truth is, danger always speaks first. It doesn't arrive unannounced. It hums in the air. It lingers in the corner of your vision. It creeps in through the cracks long before it bursts through the door. The problem is never that danger is silent. The problem is that people refuse to listen. They think they're too clever, too strong, too untouchable to be caught off guard. So they ignore the signals, and those signals become the lullaby that rocks them to sleep right before the nightmare begins. You ever notice how animals survive? They don't need maps, phones, or alarms. They survive because they pay attention to the shift in the wind, the sudden stillness in the forest, the faintest crack of a branch. They listen. And because they listen, they live. But humans, they've trained themselves to drown out the whispers. They'd rather scroll, gossip, laugh, and pretend nothing's wrong. They mistake ignorance for peace. And when danger finally raises its voice, they act shocked, as if it didn't spend hours, days, years, warning them it was coming. Danger isn't polite, but it is patient. It will wait, letting the warnings pile up around you, hoping you'll keep pretending not to notice. And most do. They hear the cough in their chest and ignore it until it becomes a disease. They see the shift in someone's eyes and dismiss it until the betrayal lands. They sense the unease in their gut and silence it until the knife is already pressed against their back. Danger whispers, and they cover their ears. And then, when it finally roars, they cry out, "How could this happen?" As if the universe owes them an explanation. But the ones who listen, the rare few, they aren't surprised when danger comes. They saw it forming long before the others did. They noticed the details, the subtle cracks in the mask, the chill in the air that didn't belong. They weren't distracted. They weren't blinded by their own arrogance. They didn't dismiss the whispers as nothing. They listened. And because they listened, they were ready. Not comfortable, not safe, but prepared. And that makes all the difference. Listening isn't about hearing noise. It's about catching the signals in the noise. It's about noticing the rhythm change, the tone shift, the silence where there should have been sound. It's about trusting that little voice inside your head, the one everyone tells you to ignore. That voice is the only thing standing between you and the trap, between survival and destruction. Ignore it long enough, and you'll swear the world betrayed you, when in reality, you betrayed yourself by refusing to hear what it was screaming all along. Danger has no obligation to save you. It offers clues, not rescues. It doesn't grab your hand and pull you to safety. It whispers and waits to see what you'll do with the information. Most people, blinded by pride or laziness, do nothing. They turn the volume down. They dismiss the signs. They laugh in the face of warnings. And when the disaster finally comes crashing down, they call it sudden. But nothing is sudden about danger. It was always speaking. You just weren't listening. Survival belongs to the one who sees the pattern first. Not the strongest, not the fastest, not even the smartest, but the one who notices the rhythm before the music swallows everyone else. Patterns are the skeleton of chaos. They hide in the noise, in the repetition of small details, in the cycle of behaviors people swear are random. But nothing is random. The same faces show up at the wrong times. The same words are whispered just before betrayal. The same mistakes repeat until they strangle you. And while most people stumble through life blind to it, someone who catches the pattern early, they own the game. The trap isn't in the obvious, it's in the repetition. A door left open again and again. A smile that never quite reaches the eyes. A phrase that comes back in different mouths, like echoes bouncing through the walls. These aren't accidents, they're clues. Threads weaving together to form the net you pretend isn't there. People miss it because they're distracted by the moment. They look at each event as separate, isolated, harmless. But patterns are only visible when you zoom out, when you connect the dots, when you realize those tiny harmless details aren't random at all. They're the rhythm of the storm about to hit. Survival isn't about strength, because strength can be broken. It isn't about speed, because speed makes you reckless. It's about awareness, the ability to catch the cycle before it repeats, to see the hidden design in what looks like chaos. The predator who studies the herd doesn't strike at random. It waits until it knows the rhythm of their movements, until it can predict exactly when they'll be weakest. That's the same way the world works. And those who don't see the pattern are always the first to fall. Think of betrayal. It's never sudden. There are signs. There are cracks. There are repeated gestures that feel wrong if you bother to notice them. But people don't. They laugh. They excuse, they wave it off as coincidence. Until the knife slides in. And then they scream about shock, about surprise, when really the betrayal was just the pattern completing itself in plain sight. if you don't see the sequence. You'll always call it bad luck. If you do, you'll realize it was inevitable. Patterns are dangerous because they're seductive. They make people feel safe. A routine, a cycle, a habit, it lulls you into believing life is predictable, manageable. But patterns also trap you, because while you think you're in control, someone else is watching, taking notes, learning how you move, how you breathe, how you react. They wait until you've repeated yourself enough times to be predictable, and then they strike. That's how survival flips. The watcher becomes the survivor, and the one stuck in the cycle becomes the prey. The cruel truth is that the pattern is always there. The difference is whether you notice it or not. Those who see it early can step outside of it, break it, rewrite it. They don't play along, they disrupt the rhythm. And that disruption keeps them alive, while everyone else dances themselves into ruin. The ones who survive aren't always the strongest. They're the ones who refuse to keep moving in the same circles while pretending they're free. Every trap, every downfall, every betrayal is written in patterns long before the end arrives. If you don't train yourself to see them, you'll keep calling it fate, bad timing, bad luck. But if you do, you'll understand that nothing was sudden, nothing was accidental. You were told the ending over and over again. It was just hidden in the repetition you were too blind to acknowledge. Survival doesn't belong to those who wait for the net to fall. It belongs to the ones who saw it being woven and moved before it was ever finished.